Representative Khanna has found himself in an unexpected position, front and center in the Twitter files. Emails between the congressman and Twitter executive Vijay Gadde were featured in the first round of the Twitter files that were obtained by Matt Taibbi.
In the emails, Congressman Khanna raised First Amendment concerns about Twitter's censorship of the New York Post and the Hunter Biden laptop story, and he has emerged from the whole Twitter files saga as something of a folk hero for standing up for free speech, even though it was his side that was benefiting from the censorship. He joins us now to discuss. Welcome, Congressman.
Great to be back on.
I have to say, I cannot think of another politician I could name who I could picture standing up for something that would hurt their side. Walk us through what made you do that.
Well, I appreciate that. The New York Post had an article about President Biden that I totally disagreed with, but Twitter decided to suspend the article, to take the article down. It decided to suspend people sharing that article. And I just thought that was wrong. Now, Twitter technically is a private entity. They're not bound by the First Amendment. But as a modern public square, they shouldn't be censoring journalists. They shouldn't be censoring newspapers, even newspapers that have a very conservative point of view.
Right, and it goes to the whole perspective that used to be, I think, very more common to progressives than to conservatives, and maybe things have gotten a little bit more confused over the last few years. But, you know, ironclad pro-free speech used to be, it was a liberal activist or progressive activist value. It was a democratic value. The American Civil Liberties Union, you know, defending the rights even of horrible people to march in town squares, et cetera, you know, fighting against speech codes on college campuses. All of this has been part of the democratic tradition. You know, did you see yourself standing up for, you know, that kind of history?
Absolutely. In fact, the two people I quote in my Wall Street Journal op-ed defending free speech are Justice Brennan and John Rawls, hardly conservative theorists. These were icons of the liberal movement. And the reality, as you point out, is free speech was critical to the civil rights movement. It was, frankly, racist against civil rights who were suing for defamation. Free speech was critical to the anti-war movements in Vietnam. It was the state that was trying to suppress the protesters. So I view free speech as core to democracy, but also core to the progressive movement.
It's so nice to hear a progressive taking such a strong stand on this issue, because it's not always the case. I wanted to ask you about something related to this, which is that, you know, clearly when it comes to Twitter and the culture of free speech, you see Elon Musk taking this sort of strong position, you know, in ways presenting himself as the avatar of free speech and the public square. But, you know, in a sort of more international perspective, when it comes to China, for example, Elon Musk is not so great on free speech. You know, he's bowed to pressure from the CCP to store data in mainland China, where it's subject to censorship and suppression. And he's also built a showroom for Tesla in the Xinjiang region, which is where the Uyghurs are being genocided. You know, I think my question would be, shouldn't we be worried about that? There's a lot of talk now about banning TikTok because of the role that the CCP has played there and sort of exporting this way for them to surveil American citizens. You know, shouldn't we be worried about Elon Musk's close economic ties to the Chinese Communist Party now that he has sort of control over what at least he sees as the American public square?
We absolutely should be worried about the CCP's control over data. And that's why we need to make sure that TikTok doesn't have any of the data going to CCP. That's why we need to bring production back to the United States, not just Tesla, but a lot of American production, 400 billion trade deficit with China. And you're absolutely right that when companies go there, whether they're tech companies or other American companies, they're subject to Chinese control. Our data can be vulnerable. They're complicit often in a government that has presided over massive human rights abuses with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. So I share your concerns. I call for an economic patriotism, which is to bring production back to the United States and make things here.
When you see, some of these reports about constant conversations that people in the FBI are having with social media companies, we know from lawsuits against Dr. Fauci and other people that there was a lot of conversation from the CDC, from some White House officials. There's a lot of government agencies and comms people and kind of the bureaucracy of the federal government talk in conversation behind closed doors with a lot of these content moderators on social media. And I agree with you. I'm a libertarian. I absolutely think these are private companies, and they can do they can do what they want, and then I get to complain about them, and that's how it works. But there's so much. We're seeing so much government messaging to these companies, and if it's to prevent terrorism, fine. Some of these seem more like political conversations in nature. What is your response to learning how vast the communications are between government agencies and social media companies?
Well, first, we need transparency. So we should have all of that come out so we understand exactly what was going on. The government is not the arbiter of truth. That's a famous Supreme Court case that says that we shouldn't be in the business of viewpoint discrimination. Now, it's a different matter if there's an account that is spewing anti-Semitism or blatant racism that people feel is threatening an incitement of violence or a hate crime. That is an appropriate flag for a government agency. There also could be a compelling interest on public health if someone is promoting blatant misinformation that courts would consider harming public health. So under Brandenburg, the First Amendment has limits. You can't just go hurt the public health or incite violence. But the question is, did the government go beyond that to viewpoint discrimination, where if someone disagreed with their point of view, they're trying to censor that would be wrong, and that's why we need all the information.
Congressman, your record on bipartisan issues, on caring about rural America, on reshoring manufacturing, investing in Appalachia, the Valor Act, and free speech, I don't know. To me, you sound a lot more like a kind of new Republican than a progressive today. What do you think of this talk about the realignment? I mean, Trump's economic populism was sort of very much in line with a lot of stuff you care about, no?
Well, I think you're omitting all my progressive policies. I'm for Medicare for all. I'm for free public college. I'm for childcare, not more than $10 a day. But I call those pro-family patriotic investments. But look, I think that we can bring people together on two core philosophies. One, I call economic patriotism. Let's make stuff in America. Let's build our industry again. Let's do it across America. I'm actually doing a bill with Marco Rubio this week on that. And then we can debate the policies that will get us there. And two, let's have an adherence to the Constitution and a love of this country as the greatest democracy in the world. I think if we do those things, then we can argue on Medicare for all and argue on $15 wage and argue on free public college. And look, I say that on conservative or liberal places. And I'm not expecting those folks to vote for me, but at least we can have a conversation.
Before we let you go, are we going to avert a government shutdown, we hope?
I hope so, and I hope we're not trying to do it on Christmas Eve, but let's get this done in the next week and show people that we're capable of functioning government.
Representative, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
We'll have more Rising right after this.